Scotland has held a day of remembrance to mark their contribution to the First World War. Continuing the national events in Glasgow last Monday to mark the centenary of the outbreak of war, in Edinburgh a Drumhead service was held at the castle before hundreds of personnel paraded through the city streets. Ali Gibson was there.
A century on in the grounds of Edinburgh Castle, serving military personnel and the general public came together to remember those who did so much.
It's not about us, it's about the nation understanding. And we are that part that will stimulate the people to go away and think about what happened 100 years ago today as Scotland answered the call of duty and its sons and daughters came together, signed up and went to fight for their country.
A Drumhead service on the Esplanade to mark the moment of calm and reflection before the march to war. This is a service conducted in the field, often on the front line and during conflict when a church is simply not available. The drums are piled together neatly to form an altar, with colours laid on top of them and marking a time for reflection and for prayer. 100 years ago, troops from across Scotland would have held services like this as they went on their way to war. Out of the castle and onto the city streets, the symbolism of the day was clear. In 1914, Scottish troops would have marched like this, out of their cities, towns and villages, into the unknown. It was a conflict which was to cost over 100,000 Scottish lives, with many more injured. In Holyrood Park, the Lone Piper called thousands of veterans, personnel and dignitaries to attention. He made his way through a replica Commonwealth War Graves cemetery. More than 1,000 headstones built to act as a symbol for Scotland's war dead. For Chief Technician Andy Harris, it's important to remember family ties.
Well, obviously, aside from my own medals here, I'm wearing my great uncle Jim's First World War medals. It was a long service medal for his time in the army. He served on the initial campaign and the opening day of the Somme. He was there. Previous to that, he was in the army for a good 18 years before the First World War broke out. So he was a full-time serviceman before the war even started.
And how does it feel, 100 years on, to be actually sort of marking the work that he did?
Well, I'm immensely proud and honoured to have the opportunity to remember him, commemorate him and the thousands of others that lost their lives in that great war.
As the First Minister laid his wreath at the memorial, it's start of a busy few years of commemorations for Scotland. As well as national events like the service at Glasgow Cathedral on the 4th of August, there will be a series of events marking days important to Scotland.
We actually go up to 1919 because the loss of HMS Isle Ayr on the 1st of January 1919 had a big impact on the Western Isles, for example, but the Battle of the Somme and Arras and also Gallipoli will also have an impact on Jutland. Remember, Jutland was up in the Orkney area and is going to be an important part of our remembrance. It doesn't mean that the others aren't of importance. We've allowed a scope that those remembrances can take place, but we've set out a programme of 8 which will be the national commemorations, and they will be planned for over this next period. We are determined, yes, to remember, yes, to commemorate, yes, to understand, but more importantly, that we learn the lessons from this.
It may be a century ago, but the war still resonates here in Scotland as people work hard to ensure that the younger generation never forget the sacrifices of those who came before them. Ali Gibson, Forces News, Edinburgh.